Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Do Thursday.
So that's a new thing now, huh?
You said you liked it, so I aim to please.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, were you going to say something else?
No, you're fine. Keep going.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Brush. That's Bob Graham. And this is today's Antidote, our daily broadcast where we try to provide that one thing. We'll talk about a topic. We have a topic for the week. We'll talk through it. And we try to provide one thing to help you move forward throughout your day, or that you can use in some other day down the line when something is standing in your way and you're trying to find a way to get through it. So we encourage you to share your thoughts and ideas as we go through our conversation. And please feel free to share your one thing at the end of the episode, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it on a replay later. We hope that you will participate, because we know that what your one thing is could be different and could be beneficial to someone out there who is needing that one thing today and the value you provide. So what we're going to talk about today is, we've been talking about what's possible all week. And we talked a little bit about like imagining it. How do we feel about it? How committed to it are we? And today our conversation is going to be a little bit about what could get in the way. Because I think that's it's an important thing to begin to understand. Because I think until we can understand that there are things like obstacles, that it's hard to then move forward. And speaking of obstacles, before we continue on our conversation, Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about...
I thought you were going to call me an obstacle there. The way you said it, I'm like, you're going to call me an obstacle. I see what's happening here. Now,
such limiting beliefs that we still have to work to break down.
Well, there you have what could get in the way. This show's over. Move on.
So why don't you tell a little bit about our upcoming workshop?
Yes.
People eliminate obstacles on Monday.
Now I'm going to try to do it without the usual enthusiasm. I'm going to do it mellow today. So folks, you're probably wondering, how can I be more effective in my business endeavors? How can I actually achieve my goals? Tom and I have an answer for you. We're doing the Eliminate Your Obstacles, Making Your Renegade Pathway Easier workshops. We're doing 2 of them on Monday, March 22nd. That's this coming Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You don't want to miss them. They are going to be a great opportunity for you to really think about how to move forward in your business. We all face obstacles. The challenge and the difference between struggling and success is often overcoming obstacles. We've got a strategy that we're going to use, that we've used with a lot of people, including ourselves, to eliminate some obstacles and move you forward. So I'm going to put in the chat box in a second a way for you to register. It's totally free. This is a gift from Tom and me to you, a way to celebrate our 1-year anniversary of this program, which is tomorrow. Who would have believed it? And so I hope to see you there at either of those 2 sessions on Monday.
Awesome. Great job. And the thing I would offer is that our strategy is not like, do this, and you will have eliminated your obstacles. It's really about providing you with thought-provoking questions to help you find your own answers. So you're going to need a pen and a paper, and you're going to have to do a little thinking on your own, and we are going to guide you through that. And I think that's what our goal is, to be the guides that help you, because it is your own unique pathway. And really only you have the answers to how you're going to continue to take the steps along that way. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about, with what's possible, what could get in the way as you try to further move yourself down that pathway to success. Do you have some thoughts on that, Bob?
Yeah, I could do a PhD program on this. Yeah. First of all, I'm going to break them down into 2 categories: internal and external things that could get in the way. And internal, self-doubt, fear, worry, criticism from others that we absorb too heavily. And then, and those, we can talk more about those if you want. And then in external things are more, well, if my marketplace gets saturated with too many other people doing what I do, or people stop using PayPal to pay for things, and my whole system is based on PayPal, or the networking group that I've always gone to and had great success finding new clients suddenly stops meeting, and I suddenly have lost an opportunity. Or, the internet changes the rules about email delivery, and it's harder to deliver email to people. Or Facebook decides that things like this are going to cost money. Those are all external factors. And you saw how easy it is for me to come up with them. I am really good at finding the obstacles. I am really good at fixating on the obstacles, not the opportunity.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's one of the things that I've had to work through, and I don't think I'm alone. And I think what happens so often is we don't think about those things that could stand in our way. We know they're there, but we don't address them. And if I can tell you, Tom, I'm really afraid. You can say, okay, what are you afraid about? And when I start to share with you what I'm afraid about, you're like, okay. And what are you going to do about it? When you go through that discussion with me, then suddenly opportunities emerge that didn't exist before. It's like, oh, do this little thing. I tell the story in the book I wrote about telling a friend that I was selling books for $10 each and complained to him that I didn't get any information from the person who I sold the book to at a discount. He's like, why don't you ask them for a business card to get the discount? And I'll never forget, he said that to me, and I'm like, that won't, wait a second. And it was such a simple thing that it had been an obstacle to me to doing some marketing. And he listened and he gave me a simple suggestion. And we all need that. It's part of what makes it hard to do what we're all doing. And I don't care whether you're starting a business, with a business for 20 years, or leading a team. Sure. Same problem comes up. You find these things that get in the way of what's possible every morning.
Yeah, and I also would look at them. Well, first I would say is that you're not alone. I think all of us can do a really good job of finding out what gets in our way. And I think it sometimes it boils down to what do you control and what do you not control. I think that's kind of like internal, external. If you're the leader of a team and you've got if you're ready to make a big presentation to your group and half the group is sick, can't make the meeting, can you control that? There's nothing you can do about that. I mean, you can have some control over it. The more you plan for it, the more you share with that, and then things can happen. And that can get in the way of us doing that. And I think the challenge then becomes, how do you move forward from it? How do you not let those things you can't control derail you completely so that you can't move forward? Or how do those things that you can control, how do you get beyond them and take those next steps? And I think that becomes really what we're going to try and do on Monday with people. And what we try to do with our laser solution sessions is like, what's the obstacle in front of you? Great. Once you identify it, now we can start to walk through how do we move beyond it. And really, is it something you control or you don't control? And I think so often both of those are things that, if we think about it, we can move beyond. Yet so often they get people just completely stuck and overwhelmed.
Well, it's safer and easier to just go, oh, the pandemic's here. I just can't do anything about it. I'm going to wait till it's over. It's coming. I can see it. Everyone's going to have their vaccine by May or June, and everything's going to go back to the way it was. It'll all be perfect. Shangri-La returns. It'll be like January of last year. I've talked to people. I talked to someone yesterday who made that case to me. And I said, there's one difference. All of us have had to deal with this obstacle, the pandemic. Whether you like it or not, whether you were aggressively looking for solutions or you were passively going through it, you had to deal with it on some level. And like we've been saying, and I think you make it real clear often, is that changes everything. The game's different. Today is not going to be like yesterday. Even though you and I do the program at 8 a.m. each morning, how many mornings has it been different? All right, 8-ish. This morning I had technology trouble. Yesterday was something else. The day before it's always changing. And I think you can either go into the day and say, hey, wow, there are going to be some obstacles. How can I overcome them? Or you can go into the day and go, I know I'm going to get blocked. I'm not going to be able to do what I want. And what's really interesting for me, Tom, I was going to share this, but I am so much better at helping other people find their obstacles and move past them than I am with my own. And I have people say to me, it's like, you must never get slowed down. I'm like, oh, if only. And I think that's one of the realities. We can't do this alone. It's impossible for me to see what's right in front of my face. The old saying, you can't see the forest through the trees, is absolutely true. And if you've ever gone into one of those corn mazes and tried to zigzag your way through, you before you start, I mean, I'm a tall guy. I can usually see my way when I start. But once you get in there and start zigging and zagging, you've lost your sense of direction. If it's nighttime, you don't have the sun. And you can get really lost really easily, even though the person who's been through it 6 times comes up to you and goes, hey, follow me. I know the way out. And you're like, oh, I was one turn away from where I needed to go. And I think that's how we are in business. Most of us are one turn away from going in the right direction, but we're paralyzed and can't figure out which way to turn. Whether it's fear, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's external criticism, or some other factor. We just can't find that next turn to get out of that maze. And of course, you know, and I know, once you get through that maze, there's going to be another maze and 16 others before the day, week, or month is over.
Absolutely. I think that becomes the challenge, you know, and I think the other group that you mentioned too, you know, that you can go through the day knowing there are going to be obstacles and figuring out and determined to get through them. You can go through knowing there are going to be obstacles and just get stuck by them. You can also start your day thinking everything is perfect and nothing can go wrong. I'm all squared away. You know, I used to do that with events. I used to walk into them when they started and I was already thinking about what could happen that's going to derail me so that I can imagine it. There are people who have a plan and they say, okay, I'm just going to barrel through it. And before they know it, they just get whacked in the head with this obstacle that they had no idea could possibly be a part of it. Now, it can happen that you have no idea that these things are coming. And if you think and talk through it a little bit, you might be able to identify, okay, well, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. If that happens, that's what I'm going to do. You know, some people would look at that as over planning, over worrying about what could happen. And others would say it's being completely prepared as best you can for whatever may arrive. Now, I don't think you can always run through all those scenarios. And it's very difficult to do alone because you feel like I've taken every precaution. I've looked at everything I can, and this is what should occur. And yet, so often there are things that are going to pop up that there's no way we could imagine that someone, if we were talking it through with someone, could say, hey, have you thought about this? What would happen? I had an example. One of the first big events I ever ran, and it was the reason I got put in charge of it. I was sitting around with a group of people, and we were going to have 5,000 people show up on this small campus to attend the lecture, and buses and whatever. And people are like, well, we'll just let people park wherever they want. And I'm like, the roads aren't that wide, and people will park wherever they want to park. And are we ready to deal with that? Are we going to ticket people? What happens if they block the road for the buses to get through? And because I had that thought, I said, well, what if we find outside places and we'll bus them in so that the roads are clearer? Because we had to move the speaker to 3 different places, and we couldn't have them get behind. And because I was the one who asked that question, guess who got put in charge of managing the overall event? And I think it was because at that time I started thinking about what could happen, what might stand in the way of this, which no one else in the room at that time had thought about. And not that they couldn't have come up with later and that maybe we wouldn't have gotten to that point, but the fact that we were in a group having a discussion brought together all of the different knowledge bases, what's real for each of them, to help us move forward. And I think so often when we feel like we have to do it alone, those obstacles, the things that get in the way, can get larger and larger.
I couldn't agree with you more. I see it in my own life all the time. I was doing a laser solution session with someone yesterday, and they thought there were 2 choices, and we came up with 4. And the sense of relief that person had when he saw, most of the time when you go from 2 to 4 choices, like, oh, this is harder. But the 4 choices really opened up possibilities. And what had been a barrier, I've got to make a hard decision, suddenly became, well, what's the opportunity? Oh, wow. I was so stuck in this one part of it. And I think that's what we often do. We fixate on the one little thing that we can't solve. And then it gets bigger and bigger. And I'm amazed how many times I can have a problem that I deal with on a Friday afternoon and just go, I'm not going to deal with this all weekend. I'm leaving this alone. And I come in Monday morning to work and it's like, okay, I got to tackle that problem. And the solution's right there. And it's like, where was that Friday afternoon? What did I do? What I did was I made that really tall wall a really short wall, and it was easy to walk over. And just by getting
and you
that,
set it aside.
Yep.
How often did you think about it over the weekend, though?
Probably a handful, typically. I mean, I tried very hard. I mean, you've seen me on weekends. I'll just be like, dude, I'm checking out. Mm-hmm. I try very hard to get the distance because I know I'm a person who thinks big picture, and I know I need to get the distance from things to be able to analyze them from a lot of different directions. And that's hard to do in the moment. And for what we're building and for what we're doing with other people and for my clients, I've got to be thinking about things. I've got to be connecting 5 or 6 different pieces, which is no different than anyone else. But I find for me to connect those 5 or 6 pieces, I need to step back from it. I need to see the full field. Like you said, 6 months ago, you talked about the football field. There's the coach up in the box who's looking down and seeing all the plays. I need to do that to be successful in my business. And that's hard for me to remember. As I'm saying it here right now, I'm like, yeah, if I could do that every day, if I could just, have coach's view for 10 minutes a day, that would be beautiful. But when you're mired in it, it's hard to step back from it. I want to put some comments in here, Tom, just to get other people. Tim said, going back to what I said, you're not alone, Bob. Many people fixate on obstacles instead of opportunities. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tim also pointed out to me, I didn't know this, Tom. I wasn't following closely, but Tim says we are at 905 members of the Ring of Renegades.
Growing every day.
Growing. Next stop is 1,000 and then 2,000.
Yes.
Tim also says contingency planning is an important part of being prepared for future events. You will never prepare for every potential problem, but with knowledge, experience, and perspective, he's catching on. He's catching on. You'll figure out what things are more likely and plan accordingly. He didn't add empathy to that one, Tom.
He didn't.
He didn't. I think you might have converted him. Watch, here comes the comment.
Yeah, no doubt. It's coming. There's no doubt.
And then Tim also says, there are many benefits from taking Sunday off from business. It gives my mind a time to reset, discard my feedback loops, and get ready for another week. That's very concise, and that's what I try to do, at least one day a weekend.
What I find is interesting is that I think it's the physical change of not sitting at my desk, not being at my workspace. Because I find that even when I step away and I'm doing other things, there are still opportunity to think about what's happening. I find so often that when I'm sitting at my desk, I just get mired in it. I've got the presentation to do next week. And while I think about it and I have taken time to process and plan it, so often some of my best ideas come when I am not saying, okay, I'm at my desk and I'm focusing on it now. I'm out doing something else, and something, whether it's a memory, something somebody says, something that happens, triggers something that in my head that says, that would be really interesting to incorporate into what was happening. I had that happen. I wasn't working. I was driving, listening to a workshop last week, 2 weekends ago, and someone said something that stuck in my head of, this might be the way that I outline the book that I'm working on. And something that I wouldn't have, if I was just sitting here at my desk, I'm not sure I would have come up with that. It was in that moment. And I think, so yes, even though we're not working, our mind doesn't always turn off. And typically those things that are of most pressing or that are urgent or that are getting in our way are still there. And at some point, something will pop up. That's why sometimes I really like driving, because when I'm driving while I'm, and I've shared this before, so often that is when I'm thinking about all the things that are happening in my world. And sometimes it goes to either those things that are in my way or those things that I have to do or important to me. And I start thinking about what are potential solutions, because my perspective is now different. I'm not like zero in, lasered on it. I'm broader. I'm getting that larger, bigger perspective from a different viewpoint. And it allows my mind to come up with things that I otherwise wouldn't have.
You also, from the research, when you're driving, taking a shower, shaving, cutting the grass, going for a run, your mind is divided in two ways. And our criticism loop, our feedback loop that's saying that's a bad idea or you'll never figure this out, disappears when you're running or doing those things, because you've got to worry about when you're driving, what's on the road, is there a stop sign, is there a red light, what's the speed limit? So now your mind, that's taking part of your brain. And then the other part of your brain that would be self-criticizing isn't in the equation now. So suddenly ideas start to arise. And I've heard people, I'm one of these people where when I take a shower, ideas come flying. When I'm listening to podcasts and driving, I have to really struggle when I drive to, I'm listening to a podcast and I have a great idea and I'm like, I got to write this down, but I'm driving. How do I do this? I've pulled over on highways to write down a great idea before, because that's when my brain gets freed of those limitations. And we all have them. And if you don't have a strategy for this, start seeing when you're your most creative, when those ideas come up. I mean, that's the thing. That would be my one thing for today, my antidote. Hey, if you haven't thought about it, when do your greatest ideas come up? I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago and they said when they cook. Another person was saying to me when they read a trashy novel. They're like, it's crazy. I'm reading this Harlequin romance, and next thing you know, I'm having all these great business ideas. I'm like, makes sense. Your mind's here,
right?
And now you've gotten away from the constraints that we're too busy putting on the constraints. If I do this, it's going to mean I have to do this. I have to work on weekends. I don't want to work on weekends. If I do this, it's going to mess up the kids. If I do this, it's going to cost me money to start it up. But once we're free of those things, then we get back to what's ultimately possible. And that's the name of the game. So What's your one thing, Tom?
Yeah, my one thing I think is that we worry so often about what could get in our way. And I actually believe that those obstacles help us more than they hurt us. If we have the opportunity to then move, if we have the opportunity to see that and understand, how can I learn from this? Because if there were no obstacles and it was easy, what would we ever learn? We would just continue to go along like, okay, all's great. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, and then the first one jumps in your way. Like, oh, now what am I going to do? Because I haven't experienced it. I think when we have those things that get in our way, we recognize it, identify it, and say, all right, that's something that happened. How do I move forward? What have I learned? How has my knowledge, experience, and perspective changed so that I can then move forward? And I think that might be my one thing, is that, yes, they can stand in our way and be huge roadblocks, or we can look at them. And actually, Tim put a comment or put a picture in the group. We can see those obstacles as building blocks to getting to the results that we want. And I think that's a very different perspective of obstacles or of actions taken that didn't achieve what we had hoped. We look at it as learning and building.
And it works because we're living proof of that. You and I saw an obstacle almost a year ago and said, hey, we got to find a way around this. This is, I remember saying very clearly to you, Tom, this is going to sink both of us. We got to figure something out. And that led to, let's do these Facebook Lives. That led to the Ring of Renegades group. That led to the Renegade Success Network. That led to the workshops we're doing. All of this was us finding a way around one obstacle and then another obstacle that we saw for ourselves and other people. And it continues to grow. Now we have 905 people in this group, which is, on one level, it's amazing. On another level, it's crazy because I'm sure you can remember that first discussion where we talked about doing this. I remember saying to you, Tom, you were doing all these Facebook Lives. This will be easy. And I never in a million years thought we'd still be doing this. Never. I wasn't even looking down the road. I was just looking for, there's this pandemic, things are changing. I need a reason to get up in the morning. If I'm accountable to Tom to do this thing every day, I might actually get through this.
Right.
And that was a big obstacle. I mean, I remember when we first were having that discussion, how much we were dreading that, and I lost business over the course of a couple of days. You lost some business over the course of a couple of days. And it's like, what are we going to do? And I think that's how we all eventually operate. You get to a place where you've got to figure it out. Sometimes it's economic reasons that you have to go, I got to figure this out finally because this isn't working. Sometimes it's just, I can't take the stress of this. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do that thing. And I think that's the opportunity, like you said. The best discoveries in my life have come from the greatest adversities. Truly. Look at this whole effort. This is one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire life. And it wasn't even considered a year and a day ago.
Right. Which is hard to imagine. Well, actually, I think we started a little bit before that, and that's just what it is. So we would love to hear, what's your one thing about what could go wrong within your when you think about what's possible. So please share that in the comments. You can also share it in our Ring of Renegades Facebook group where the conversation will continue. And if you are not yet a member of that group and like to join, it's easy to do. Just go to Facebook, search for Ring of Renegades. It is a private group. So when you ask to join, you're going to have to tell us why you're a renegade. Because we want to create a space where community members, our 905 and growing community members, feel like they can have conversations like this. They can share, here's what's the challenge they're facing. And others will be there for whatever they're looking for. They might be just providing space for them to share. They might be looking for solutions. They might be looking for different perspectives to help them continue to move forward on their own unique pathway to success. So if you're not already a member of that, please join us. And then we will find you inside of there. And if not, we will see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for our 1-year anniversary, Today's Antidote. With that, everyone, I hope that you have a great day, and we will see you soon.
Carving your own path is tough. You want and need a community to offer you insights and advice, share inspiration, provide support, and save you time and money. But where do you find all that? Here's the easy answer: the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners identify their next steps. Here's some of what you will find at the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Just go to ringofrenegades.com and join today. Find and accomplish those next steps.